All right, so kind of moving forward with everything. We're on lesson 9.1.1. The overview of the chapter is inequalities. So we'll start with one variable inequalities, kind of move forward with two, and then move on to systems of inequalities. So some of this stuff I've already kind of written out. Hopefully you can read it. I'll draw a couple bigger ones, but I wanted to keep that up there just so you could reference back to it. But the four different types of symbols we're going to be dealing with. Okay, if we say x is greater than 4, essentially any number greater than 4 can fall into x. So you're talking about 5, 6, 7, up to infinity. Okay, any number can be plugged in here for x, like those numbers, and those will all fit. Okay, if we put a line underneath it, now we're stating x is greater than or equal to 4. So it's all those same numbers. Okay, the only difference is now we're including the number 4 because it can be greater than or equal to that number. Okay, if we flip it, and now we have x is less than 4. So any number less than 4, okay, we'll talk about what that looks like on a number line here in a second. But again, any number less than 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, so on and so forth, all the way down to negative infinity. And then if we put a line under it, we're now stating x is less than or equal to 4. Okay, so all those same numbers, -3 all the way to, 3 all the way to negative infinity. Now we're including 4 in that as well. So the thing I learned when I was a kid, I said x is this to 2, x is greater than 2, and the way you can think about it is this symbol either points to the smaller number. Okay, so in this case it's pointing to 2, so that's the smaller number. X would have to be bigger than anything. Okay, the other thing was, take a different color here, turn that into Pac-Man. Okay, Pac-Man eats the bigger number. So you can look at it one of those two ways if you have trouble remembering, okay, based on which way the inequality is facing. Always remember it points to the smaller number, or you could just state that Pac-Man here. It's kind of hard to tell in that red. Hopefully you know what Pac-Man is. Maybe I'm getting too old, but Pac-Man always eats the bigger number. Okay, you can also turn it into an alligator. Alligator eats the bigger number, whatever floats your boat there. Okay, so it's really important that you understand all of those. Okay, being able to interpret what it is saying in sentence form helps out a lot. So if you can look at this and read it as x is greater than 4, x is greater than or equal to 3, x is less than -5, x is less than or equal to 6. Okay, so the first lesson isn't too difficult. It talks about being able to graph it on a number line. Okay, there's one big thing we got to think about. Okay, so let's say we have x is greater than -2. If we want to graph this on a number line, you have a line, doesn't really matter. Okay, let's say 0's in the middle. Here's -2. So at -2, that's kind of our main point here. What we want to do is we want to draw an open circle. And the reason we draw an open circle here is because we're not going to include that point. Okay, we're going to either have an open circle or a closed circle. We'll talk about closed circle here in a second. Okay, but anytime we don't have a line underneath it, if we're not including the point, okay, we want to have an open circle. So now we read the sentence, x is greater than -2. Okay, well, where on the number line are the points greater than -2? Is it to the left or is it to the right? Okay, in this case, it's going to be to the right because all of these numbers, 1, 2, 3, okay, so on, all those points are greater than -2. So you can draw the squiggly line. Okay, usually makes it a little easier. Okay, then we cap it off with an arrow because it's going to keep going. All of those points work out. Okay. I can kind of see the chat, so if anybody, Jill, Mariah, if you guys have questions, just kind of shoot them in there and I'll try and keep looking. Let's say we wanted to graph x is, let's say less than or equal to 3. Okay, we want to graph this one on a number line. Again, start with our number line. You don't always even have to write 0. I'm just going to write here's 0, here's 3. Okay, just because it kind of helps me know. Okay, I know 0 is going to be less than 3, so it kind of helps me understand which way I should be going. Okay, so if x is less than 3, again, 3 is our point. Okay, we're going to use a closed circle now. Okay, because we are including that point. So we're including the point 3, so we want to use our closed circle. And now all the points that are less than 3 would be going to the left. So we can kind of draw a squiggly line and go from there. Pretty straightforward for the most part. Taking a look at the classwork. I'm going to kind of jot them down. So we have an idea. They kind of make you go the opposite way. They give you the graph, and I'll just kind of go through. So this is going to be 9-3. So A gives you a number line. We have a closed dot and it goes to the right, like so. So we want to be able to write an equation, inequality that fits this. So again, we know our point is 1. We have our x value. Okay, so we got to think about what points we're referring to. Going to the right, all the numbers are greater than, so we want x to be the bigger number. This is going to be the smallest number. So we're going to point to 1 because it's the smallest number. And again, since it's a closed circle, we'll put a line underneath it. So now we have x is greater than or equal to 1. And it fits all those points. B goes over to -1, and they give us an open circle, and they have it going to the left. So here we have x and we have -1. Another thing I always like to do is have x on the left hand side. You can do it either way. You can have it on whatever side you want, it doesn't really matter. If you always keep it on the left side, it's always easier to read. Okay, I could write this with x on the left hand side, but now I'm flipping the sign. So it would actually be, it would look like this. Okay, and it kind of just gets confusing because now you're saying 1 is less than or equal to x. I always like to say the x first. Everybody likes to say the x first. Okay, so I would always keep it just so the x is always on the left-hand side. It just makes it a lot easier to say. That way you can always say x is greater than, x is less than. Just kind of like that. It makes it a lot easier. So here we're going to the left, so that means we want points less than that. We're not going to draw a line underneath because it's an open circle. Joe's asking if we're having a test on this content. So that email I sent out to you and your parents, okay, this will be an optional test that can replace your chapter 6 or chapter 7 test. So there will be an optional test on all this stuff, and you're going to need it for integrated 2 and 3 and so on. So I would learn it, but you know, that's just me. Erase this. Looking at C and D, it's a little different because they're going to give you 2 points. And so C, on the number line, has an open circle at 3, and then a closed circle at positive 2. All right, so on this one, we have to just be a little more careful with our wording, because since we have 2 inequalities, we can write each one at a time. We'll say x is less than -3. Should be a closed circle here. And so then we also have x is greater than 2. So we have 2 different graphs here, 2 different lines. We have to be careful with the wording. Okay, so if we want a value to plug in for x, it has to be less than -3 or greater than 2. So we want to throw the word or in there just to kind of let us know. Oops, and this should have a line underneath it. We throw in the word or, okay, it helps us with understanding the number could be less than 3 or it could be greater than 2. Both of those fit into this graph. And the other way on D is when they're connected. So we have our number line, and it goes from -4 to 2. With a closed dot there. Okay, so again, -4, the numbers are going to be greater than, so x is greater than -4, and then this way they're going to the left, so we would say x is less than or equal to 2. Okay, but we don't really want to say or. Okay, because notice it stops at 2, it doesn't keep going. So when we say x is greater than -4, really that keeps going all the way to the right, which isn't necessarily true. Same thing, x is less than 2, that really just keeps going all the way to the left here, not necessarily true. So this has to fit both criterias. So in this scenario, we would say and, okay, x is greater than 4, and it also has to be less than +2. Okay, so really important that or and, we have 2 different types of scenarios here. Okay, there's a couple different ways to draw them as well. You could put the x in the middle here on this one. Okay, makes it a little difficult because now the x isn't on the left hand side for this second part. Okay, but it kind of fits in the middle here. This is still saying x is greater than -4, and it's got to be less than 2. Okay, you couldn't really do it on this one. It just gets a little bit confusing. The ors are a little bit different. Okay, you really would want 2 different types of equations or inequalities so that it doesn't overlap. This one overlaps. You're trying to fit in that middle ground right there. So we use if you just wanted to write it just like this, that's fine. Okay, if you want to be able to write it, you'll see a lot more like this. Okay, than you will where it's using or and, like if on the homework. I believe they must not be today's. Okay, but you'll see it more often, and if you look at the notes for the section as well, it shows you the inequality symbols and what they mean and all that stuff. What other one did I want to look at? Oh, I remember. 9-4. I realize if you're watching this online, my fingers are, I have my phone set up on my computer so that I can kind of record this, plus have access to the ebook as well. Let's take a look at 9-4. Okay, so it says with your team. Obviously we don't have a team. Find at least 5 xi's that make the inequality true. So they give us the inequality 2x minus 5 is greater than or equal to 3. So very similar to when we are working in solving equations. We want to get a variable on a side by itself. So in this case, we want to get x on a side by itself, preferably on the left-hand side. Makes it a lot easier for us. Okay, so when it comes to solving for x, all the same rules apply. If you were making, if it was an equal sign and we were trying to solve for x, it would be the exact same thing. So we can add 5 to this side. Now we have 2x is greater than or equal to 8. Divide by 2. So now we have x is greater than or equal to 4. So the problem asks to come up with a handful of numbers that fit this inequality. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All work. 9, 10, 11, 12. All the way up to infinity. Okay, would all fit. Now you can always go back and plug it in and make sure that it works. So if I plugged in 5 to my original inequality, 2 times 5 minus 5 is greater than or equal to 3. 2 times 5 is 10. I get 5 is greater than or equal to 3, which is true. Okay, so I know 5 would fit that inequality. Fun stuff, I know. I know you're all sitting at home right now thinking, wow, really bummed I'm missing out on this in class. We're doing the best we can. So on the homework, okay, they give you 9-7, it's just asking you to solve for the inequalities and then represent it on a number line. So like 9-7a on the homework. Two times 3p plus 1 greater than -4. Okay, so we can solve this just like we normally would. You can either divide by 2 right now, or you can distribute. I'm going to divide by 2 since it works out nicely. So I get 3p plus 1 greater than -2. Subtract 1 and divide by 3. So I get p is greater than -1 on a number line. P is greater points greater than -1. Remember, open circle because there's no line underneath inequality. Okay, so the last thing I want to show you, and it is somewhat important, and I believe it comes up on C. So we'll take a look at C. Over here doing half your homework for you. Five minus h is greater than or equal to 4. Alright, so we subtract 5 from both sides, we get negative h is greater than or equal to -1. Okay, so we almost have the variable on the side by itself. Okay, the last thing we have to do is divide by -1. Okay, so anytime you divide by a negative, when dealing with inequalities, you have to flip the sign. So we actually end up with h is less than 1. Okay, and I'll show you on a number line here. Okay, so we end up having something like this. Okay, so easiest number, if we wanted to double check, we want to use a point, okay, and double check our work. Okay, easiest point to check would be 0. If I plug in 0 to this inequality, I get 5 minus 0 is greater than or equal to 4. Obviously that just becomes 5 is greater than or equal to 4. Is 5 greater than or equal to 4? Yes. So that means 0 should be in the shaded region, which in this case it is. Okay, if you didn't flip the sign, it would be pointing to the right. You would plug in the point 2. So let's say I plugged in 2. I end up getting 3 is greater than or equal to 4. 3 is not greater than 4. So I know that 2 should not be in the shaded region, which in this case it is not. Okay, so even if you get down to this point, you know that 1's your boundary point, you put the point there. Okay, you can double check your work and just make sure that you can plug in a point that should work, make sure it works for the inequality. Plug in a point that shouldn't work, plug that in for the inequality. Okay, make sure you get a sad face there, and you can at least double check your work that way. Okay. Looking at the rest of the homework stuff you should be able to do. If you have questions, you can always shoot me an email. So the way the homework will work, if you'd like to improve your homework grade, okay, what you need to do is do the homework for each day that's assigned. I put an assignment in on Schoology. So you can do that. Take a picture of your homework, either email it to me. If you could submit it on Schoology, that would be a lot easier. That way I can see that you've done it and just give you credit right there. So if you're looking to improve your homework grade, you can do that. We're going to do some essential skill makeups coming up. The first one will be a week from today. It should be on Friday, which I believe is triangle congruence. Might be wrong. Double check that email I sent out to you, and we'll take a look at those. If you have questions, shoot me an email. Fun stuff, guys.